invasion isn't just a national security issue, it's also a resource issue and an influence issue. And this is why we are posturing the way that we are posturing, because Venezuela doesn't have the ability to actually defend itself against our military might. The designation of these criminal organizations as a terrorist organization is nothing more than a ruse to justify aggression towards Venezuela to instigate either a revolution, an assassination, or Maduro fleeing, like Bashar al-Assad did.
Myron Gaines just broke down something the mainstream media will never admit. America's war on drugs might actually be a war for control. They're calling it an anti-narco terrorism. But when you strip away the buzzwords, it looks a lot more like a regime change blueprint we've seen before. Iraq, Syria, Libya, now Venezuela. The question is, what's the real play here? Let's plug in.
All right. Okay, let's get into Venezuela real quick. Okay, guys, let's get into Venezuela, and then we'll go into our main story, which is Tucker Carlson. But let's go ahead and cover Venezuela because, guys, what's going on with Venezuela is nuts. I'll be honest with you guys. I'm actually very split in my view of this because on one end, I understand that these narco traffickers have been a problem for a very long time. But on the other side, I don't want a war, and we're dangerously close to flirting with one. Right? And I don't think Venezuela? A war on drugs justifies a potential real military conflict. Does that make sense? So let's go ahead and kind of get into this from the beginning.
Drugs looks like.
I see boats coming in like loaded up the other day with all sorts of drugs, and we're going to take them out.
The U.S. military destroyed these boats in international waters.
And I think they've killed somewhere between 30 to 40 different people in all of these strikes.
Waters off of Venezuela's shores. Trump is justifying the controversial attacks as targeting narco-terrorists. It's the biggest U.S. military deployment in the region of the 21st century.
Since the war on terrorism.
And it could also be targeting Venezuela's leader Nicolas Maduro's grip.
Well, let's be clear about this. Let's be absolutely crystal clear on this topic.
He is a dictator.
This war on narco-terrorism, guys, is a regime change strategy. Maduro has always been a problem for the United States. And we're going to go into why in a little bit here. But I called this. If you guys remember, all the real niggas remember back in January.
Who cares, really?
Remember when Trump was signing all those executive orders and he designated Tren de Araguas terrorist organization? And he named a lot of these Mexican cartels as terrorist organizations, etc. Remember that, guys?
Yeah.
What did I tell you guys back then? I told you guys, they're doing this so that they can use military and intelligence resources to combat this problem. Historically speaking, when it came to the war on drugs, it was a law enforcement only situation, which means gather evidence, bring it in court of law, indict them, charge them, pretty much ends there. DEA, FBI, HSI, we're leading the run on that one. But once Trump came in and designated these cartels as terrorist organizations, well, now the gloves are off because now you can use the full weight of the Department of Defense, aka now called the Department of War, as well as the intelligence community, like the CIA, like the NSA, right? Now you can use all of these tools that were historically used, that are still in place from the war on terror 20 years prior. Now you can use them against narco traffickers. And what does that mean? Targeted airstrikes, lethal kinetic explosions against these individuals, like Pete Hegseth has been showing on Twitter, that they're declassifying as it happens. We basically turned the Mohammeds into Miguels.
So on the surface, it sounds like another patriotic mission, the U.S. targeting drug traffickers off Venezuela's coast. They frame it as national security, right? Boats full of drugs, narco-terrorists protecting freedom. But the deeper you look, the more it resembles the same script Washington has used for decades. Label your enemy a terrorist, expand military power, move assets into the region, and boom, the public cheers for another intervention. Trump reclassified drug cartels as terrorist groups, and overnight, it unlocked the full use of CIA, NSA, and Department of Defense tools. Surveillance, drone strikes, assassinations, you name it. They turned a law enforcement issue into a war.
And I told you guys this at the beginning of the year. Did I not predict this? I told you guys that they were going to leverage the might of the military and the intelligence community, the IC, to take on far more aggressive action against these drug trafficking organizations. Because once you label them the T word, yeah, it's pretty much a wrap.
Fatality.
Let's get back to it.
On power. So is this really a war on drugs from Venezuela? Or is the U.S. up to something bigger in the Caribbean?
So is it a drug war or a power grab?
Maybe both. Maybe a little
The
bit of both.
Roosevelt Roads naval base in Puerto Rico was shut down in 2004. For the last 2 decades, it was abandoned and slowly being reclaimed by nature. But now, the US military is back. And with their most advanced fighters, Reaper drones, and Osprey tilt-rotor aircraft. Puerto Rico is a largely self-governed territory of the US. The US military buildup is not only on the island, it's taking place across the Caribbean, with warships, aircraft, and even a nuclear-powered submarine. And their sights are set on Venezuela.
It's a significant deployment. We haven't seen anything like this in a
Yeah, we've been mobilizing quite a bit of military assets close to Venezuela to assert dominance.
generation.
Christopher Hernandez Roy is an expert on the Americas and on geopolitics at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a US think tank.
Now here's where it gets dark. This isn't just about drugs. It's about dominance and resources. Venezuela sits on some of the richest oil and mineral reserves in the Western Hemisphere, and its dictator, Nicolas Maduro, just happens to be backed by China, Russia, and Iran. You see where this goes, right? Every time a nation aligns against the dollar, it becomes the next enemy of democracy. Sound familiar? The US doesn't want stability, it wants obedience. And the way you get that is by replacing a leader, not with democracy, but with a puppet. This is where the Matrix illusion kicks in. You're told it's about freedom, but what's really being exported is control. We've entered an era where the word terrorist isn't about safety anymore. It's a shortcut for domination. We saw it in Syria when intelligence agencies backed militias to overthrow Assad. We saw it in Ukraine when regime change was rebranded as liberation. And now we're seeing the Caribbean version of the same movie. Puerto Rico's base is reactivated, nuclear subs in the region, Reaper drones overhead. The war isn't declared, but it's already begun.
For a counter
Now, guys, I've never seen this video, but let me give you guys my take real quick before he gives his, just so you guys know where I kind of stand, and I can give some commentary on his. Basically, it's very simple, okay? There are 2 main powers, maybe 3, okay? You have the Western Hemisphere that is run by us, the United States, where we exercise the most dominance and influence. Then you have the China-Russia corridor in the East, okay, where they exercise their dominance. One of the reasons why America's been able to stay a superpower for so long is because we are isolated. We have a strategically beautiful position where you have to traverse a lot of water and ocean to get to us, okay? We're smack dab in the middle of both the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean, where you have to cross these large bodies of waters to actually attack us. This is why the United States is able to put military bases all over the world
Russia and Alaska
while keeping the homeland actually safe. This doesn't get talked about enough, how we have a huge geographical strategic advantage from a military standpoint, okay? It's very difficult for people to invade us and or attack us the way that we are situated. So we enjoy hegemony in this part of the world.
They don't have military bases
military,
in this
economic might,
in this hemisphere,
strategic positioning,
in the Western Hemisphere,
all these different things. Now, Venezuela's current dictator, Maduro,
we have military bases everywhere.
Pretty much liked and disliked by a lot of his constituents. And America views him as a dictator that does not run fair elections and a narco trafficker. He's been indicted several times in New York and the Southern District of Florida. Him and many of his people in his cabinet, higher ups in his government, for drug trafficking.
Damn,
right?
Tony Montana.
And as a matter of fact, there's a big bounty on his head. We covered this a couple of weeks ago, where he has something like a $50 million bounty on his head. Guys, to put things in perspective for you, this is more than Osama bin Laden had during the height of 9/11, okay? 50 million is a lot. I think Osama's peak was 30 million.
Wow.
So that should put into perspective for you guys how badly they want this guy out of power. Now you're probably asking, Myron, why? Is it oil? Is it their reserves? Is it their natural resources, etc.? Well, it's a combination of things. As you guys know, they have a huge supply of like crude oil, similar to what we have here in the United States. A lot of natural resources. But the other thing also that the United States doesn't like is that Maduro is aligned with and is supported by many of our enemies, to include China, Iran, and Russia. Okay? Ever since World War II with the Cold War era, the United States has been fighting a silent, right, and non-traditional warfare with Russia, okay, with the Cold War. Some people say it's over. Some people think it's still going on. I think it's still going on. Maybe not at the same level where we had the communism paranoia of the post-World War II era. But I think it's safe to say that we shake hands with the Russians and the Chinese, but we have our fingers crossed behind our backs, right? We understand that they have nuclear weapons. We have nuclear weapons. So diplomacy is required. However, we don't trust each other. If I can boil it down into layman's terms for you guys, from a geopolitical perspective. We shake hands in public, but backstab each other when no one's looking. They catch our spies in Russia and China all the time. We catch their spies in the United States all the time. This is why the FBI has active counterintelligence groups that target Russian foreign intelligence and Chinese foreign intelligence. Okay? Now that we have that out the way, since Maduro is aligned with these other powers, this presents a problem for us. And the United States wants, given Venezuela's rich resources, they want a government there that is going to be pro-US. Think of Venezuela and Maduro right now as the equivalent of Fidel Castro, the former dictator of Cuba, who we've had a long-standing beef with, right? Now, there are other countries as well that we have problems with. Nicaragua come to mind and some others. Colombia now even, who used to be a great ally, but now we're kind of beefing with them a little bit because the current president of Colombia doesn't see eye to eye with our support of Israel. And Maduro also does not like Israel as well. Another fun fact for you guys. He's pro-Palestine. He does not recognize Israel as a sovereign state and is against Zionism, right? So he's against Zionism, as an ally of Iran, ally of China, ally of Russia. And they're in our part of the hemisphere. And they have resources. Well, my friends, this is the perfect storm for a coup. What is a coup? A coup, my friends, is where intelligence agencies... Well, let's go back a little bit. For you guys to really understand this, I need to kind of explain this.
Oh, boy.
After World War I and World War II, the concept of trench warfare and actually being on a battlefield and shooting and killing each other was something that the world didn't want to engage in again. Millions of people died during World War II. It was a very dark time in human history.
This is true.
So after World War II, what we saw was the explosion of intelligence agencies. And the goal of these intelligence agencies, to include the OSS, by the way, the OSS became the CIA. Real nigga, stand up.
Falcon Punch!
Okay, the Office of Strategic Services, aka the O/Squad. But anyway, shameless plug.
Shout out to the homies.
Agencies. And what these intelligence agencies basically did was, instead of getting into traditional ground type warfare with large casualties, let's go ahead and take a more scaffold and refined approach. Let's overthrow governments.
So essentially what Myron's saying is the Matrix doesn't use bullets anymore. It uses narratives. It programs you to cheer for wars you don't understand and to see invasions as peacekeeping. Every terrorist label is a backdoor into another resource grab. The media runs the illusion, the politicians sell it, and the people swallow it because it's wrapped in the stars and stripes. But the truth is, America's enemies aren't always out there. Sometimes they're the ones writing the script. If you're still watching, you're already unplugged. Welcome to Anomaly Report, where we don't just react, we decode. Hit subscribe, drop a comment below, and tell me, do you think the war is about drugs or power?